Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen expects to use my car because she's pregnant. I flat out refuse. After that, farm folk versus city crew. And after that, am I the jerk for telling my friend that he's basically an employee of his dad and not a business owner like he says he is? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to use anyone's car. But I deserve it! So please smash that like button, and if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen expects to use my car because she's pregnant. I flat out refuse. I'm 27, female, and my friend John, who's 28, got Lisa pregnant. She's 27. She's 8 months in, and neither have a car. There's a second guy involved, cause he was getting with Lisa some of the same days that John was, so they got no clue who the dad is. But this guy is doing the bare minimum of paying 1/3 of her doctor's bills. Before I worked from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., John borrowed my car in the afternoons to take Lisa to the doctors and such. Now Christmas is coming. This is my money-making period. From November till New Year's, I become a social recluse who works about 15-hour days. I had warned John in July and in October that my car would no longer be available from November onwards. He said he'd find a solution. They've been unable to find another car, and so Lisa called me to compromise. Lend them my car and I carpool to work. Keep my normal hours. Co-sign a car with John. Forward them money to buy one. I'm not okay with any of those options, so I said no. Lisa talked about her pregnancy trouble. It's a newborn during winter. Public transportation is not safe right now. No one else is willing to help. It's not just about me anymore. Don't I feel any empathy or compassion for her baby? That's the short, polite version. I know she's full of hormones and stressed, but I didn't appreciate the guilt trip. I'm not the baby daddy, and I've helped her more than her own parents and the other guy have. I told her that, and she's accusing me of shaming her. So I went with it and was like, you figured out how to get with 2 guys in one day, multiple times without a car. You can figure out how to manage the consequences without a car. It's your baby. She threw me the old classic. There's a special place in heck for women who don't support other women. And I was like, oh good, you won't be there. It's a highway to heck after all. John called and said I was a jerk. The heck part was kind of funny, but I'm a jerk for everything else because Lisa really tried hard to work with me and I'm being stubborn. I agreed that some things I said were hurtful, but in the context, I feel justified. She has 2 potential baby daddies, roommates, her parents are in this city, and I'm the one receiving her wrath? She's due in a month, and I was clear from the start I would only help till November. So not only was Lisa's guilt trip about the baby moot, what the heck have they been doing the last 8 months? This should have been sorted out by now. John said I'm a cold-hearted jerk for taking the car away, and he called our mutuals and they got involved, but no one's offering up their cars either. I know I'm a jerk for what I said. There's not even a doubt in my mind that I was a jerk. But I really need to know, am I the jerk for not letting them keep using my car anymore? Especially as no one else is stepping up. Or am I the jerk because no one else is letting them use theirs? Am I the jerk for not letting them keep using my car this winter? Edit. John's a high school friend. This is the first time he's ever done me dirty. Lisa is a 2-week fling he had. Both John and the other guy are getting paternity tests done, and they're not sticking around if they're not the father. There is also at least 2 other potential fathers from around the same time. So yeah, no one actually is committed to Lisa and the baby. They're kind of just there in case it's theirs, but high-key hoping it's not. After reading the comments, I think that's why John doesn't want to get a car. He won't need one if there's no baby. I have no idea what he told Lisa for her to think me co-signing a car is a viable idea. But he's acting like a complete tool towards me, and clearly I'm going to have to stomp that out soon, one way or another. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk? Should she let them keep using her car? Please let us know. She's only a jerk if she keeps these ingrates in her life. Farm folk versus city crew. Hello all. My nieces and nephews have decided I, as the cool auntie, must master this thing called Reddit with stories of my youth. I hope you all enjoy seeing the story written out as much as they've enjoyed hearing it over the years. To start this story, I need to explain a bit about where it happened. My grandfather owned a 150-acre plus forest campground property with over a dozen buildings on the property. These buildings ranged from the common rooms, ceremony hall, barn, 18 different cabins, and a few other buildings one might find on a beautiful campground. This was used as a venue for all sorts of company retreats, wedding events, camps, or getaways. Anytime a camp was run that used horses, my grandpa enlisted the help of the grandkids. He had gotten his fill of screaming and shouting kids or excitedly shrieking women or men who thought they knew best when it came to horses by the time I came along. One event happened when I was about 11 years old. I was helping out with the Girl Scouts guided tour on one of the trail rides when I noticed the smell was wrong in the air. I had us all turn back while the den mother tried to harp on about how I was cutting their trail short. I lied and said one of the horses had a bad limp and we needed to turn back right away. All of the girls were worried about the horse in question, and the rider offered to walk next to her horse all the way back. I said he'd be okay, but we needed to turn back now. Well, when we made it out of the thick forest trail where the trees weren't blocking us in, we could see what made me and the horses so uneasy. Smoke. Loads of smoke was coming up from the mountain. The worst place for a fire to be is downwind of you. I know the property. I'd grown up riding and climbing all over it. I ordered everyone to give their horse their head and let them bolt back to the barn. The barn had a large open arena that was just plain dirt. It would last until we could get them down to the fire station. I let everyone ride hard past me. These girls were barely clinging to their horses, and I was worried that someone might fall off if I was completely honest. Well, we made it back to the arena without any real issues. A lot of the girls were crying. One of my older brothers assured us that everything was all right and told the girls they would be earning a few extra badges today. They'd sign off on them and everything, which got the girls to brighten up a lot. Now, the fire hadn't spread too far onto Grandpa's property just yet. I knew of the large water tanks, had to join in cleaning them before, but I never understood how exceptional the water tanks really were. That day, I got to see my grandpa's water storage almost choke an entire forest fire. The 5 small tanks, 30,000 gallons, were accessed at key spots with the fire department. The 3 medium tanks, 65,000 gallons, were put onto a sprinkler system that absolutely soaked everything on the property, turning it to a thick mud. Even the gravel and cement pathways were covered in mud. However, the 2 large tanks, 120,000 gallons, were being used with the firefighting helicopters. To a kid, it felt like you were in the middle of a war zone. I was scared as I tried to keep the Girl Scouts and the horses calm when the firecopters flew overhead to refill at the main large one. By the end of it, the fire was out. The Girl Scouts got 5 badges, ranging from fire safety to leadership, and everyone was safe. The cleanup for the fire took 2 weeks, a lot of pressure washing, and a lot of back-breaking labor. Now, on to the main reason I'm here, to tell the story of petty revenge. On Grandpa's property, there were beautiful trails, a gorgeous vista that had almost no light pollution and plenty of reasons to hike, explore, and book us for events. Grandpa was protective of these venue spots because if he allowed people to walk freely, people wouldn't pay for use of them. So he made sure to follow the letter of the law, marking it as private property, and would chase people down if they violated it. One person in town hounded Grandpa for use of the property for free because Grandpa attended the church. She demanded Grandpa give them free use of the property for every book study, every little event. However, she wanted to charge an admission that would go right back into the church that her husband was one of the pastors to. To say Grandpa did not enjoy this money-grubbing woman was an understatement. He wasn't a churchgoer, but to keep the peace with his wife's church, he would host free events once a year or so for the church's youth. A free event to come up, be fed for a 3-day weekend, interact with the horses, go on trail rides, and go fishing in the river or in the big pond on the property. He would host 3 a year for the kids in the valley, depending on their age. He would also enlist his kids and grandkids to help out with the events to save on costs of running them. Well, after doing this for 5 years, it came out when I went to the church that she had been charging families almost $300 for the sake of going to the church. I had gone with my oldest brother, who they assumed was my dad, and tried to sell him on the event. My brother's face went red, and he asked for further confirmation on the dates and the event itself. He agreed to think about it, and the woman went on to badger another family. They offered sponsorships that allowed the kids to go up for a discount too. She was squeezing every last penny out of her fellow churchgoers. My brother and I had been there to talk to the head pastor, not this woman's husband, about him visiting our grandmother since she was bedridden due to her old age. Mid-sermon though, my brother stood up after whispering to another woman to ask if the one hosting the service was the husband to that woman or not. When she had confirmed that he was, my brother stood up. This was not our church. No one here knew us. My brother had a voice that could fill up a space while talking at a normal tone, so when I heard him suddenly speaking after standing, I was surprised myself. You can imagine the look on over 200 people's faces as a stranger stood up and interrupted a sermon. Brother, I'm surprised you're able to stand up on that stage and speak of honesty to these people. You and your wife are crooks and thieves. You've been stealing from them for who knows how many months. I'm curious how far down the rabbit hole your theft goes. Pastor, excuse me, sir. What are you talking about? Brother, my grandfather runs the horse camp all the kids are attending this coming weekend. He's never charged any of the kids or their families a cent for using it. He knows how hard it is to attend fancy camps. He had to pay for all of his kids. He hated having to come up with so much money all the time. He hosts a free event for the kids. His grandkids help him run the event. I should know, I'm the stable master during the event. You could have heard a pin drop. The pastor's face turned a few shades of red, and then a woman stood up a few rows back from us. Woman, what do you mean? He doesn't charge. This woman looked ready to breathe fire, and I noticed this woman had 5 kids with her. She looked ready to start a riot as my brother nodded. Brother, my granddad knew firsthand how hard it was to come up with funds and how much going to different places affected his kids and helped them grow. He pays for their food. He lets them use the horses, has his family teach them about horses, and, hey Daniel, remember me? One of the older kids had been staring at my brother from this woman as he confirmed that my brother worked at the event. Everything broke out into screaming and shouting at that point, and it took us hours to sort everything out. The pastor's wife had gone missing during this screaming match. It came to light the pastor thought his wife, who headed the organization, would give all of the funds off to my grandpa. She never even put them into the church. Things got a little crazy as everyone realized she was gone and the weight of the scam she had pulled off on them. Each event hosted around 20 to 25 kids. People would donate money to help the kids of the families with less funds too. So we're not sure how much under the table money was given for that goal, but we do have an estimate on how much she got away with. $105,000 was the estimate she got away with before vanishing into the night. To say it was confusing was an understatement for me. I just wanted to go back home and keep an eye on the horses. My oldest brother's fury was nothing compared to the anger my grandpa felt. He was so angry about all of it and only allowed the head pastor to come up and visit his wife. No one else. He was bitter, but at his wife's request, he wouldn't let his bitterness affect the kids. We hosted the events as planned, and Grandpa's bitterness grew as we went from having 25 at our max to almost 50 per session. Every bed was filled in the camp beds, every bunk stuffed, and all of our hearts felt raw. I was a kid and I felt cheated, but I refused to let that show trying to follow Grandpa's example. I failed miserably a few times, I'm sure of that, but I did try. Well, now we're on to the revenge part of the story. All of the above happened in the lovely era of internet is a thing? How new? Grandpa had his venue listed in the yellow pages, if that dates us at all. I had turned 20, and Grandma's health, which had been in steady decline over the past few years, had really crashed hard. Her end was getting close. Grandpa asked me to help with her and the events going on because he was in no way ready to visit with people at all. So I balanced taking care of her needs and Grandpa's needs with running the venue through the booked events. On the website I removed all the information and wrote a message that stated, "Due to current conditions, only previously booked events are on the schedule. Thank you. We'll be up and running again after the events conclude." It was the nicest way I could think to put, "My grandparents aren't able to handle people at the moment. Please leave us all alone." Well, while in with the pastor in town, after tending to things for almost 5 months, my truck broke down. Unfortunately for me, the auto shop needed a part from another city, and it would take a few days to get there. I asked a family member if he could tow me to the shop over there, and he offered to have his wife drop off their car so I could get back to work with Grandma and he'd take care of my truck. I politely refused, desperately needed a break. Even just a ride to another town 30 minutes away would get me away from the suffocating feeling with them. They agreed and took me over to get my truck fixed. Now, the shop owner said it would be about 3 hours to fix it and I could wander around the town. I told my family member I was good. He could head out and I'd call if I needed more help. He gave me a hug and told the auto shop he'd pay for the repair. I needed a break and I appreciated that. Family helps family is our family creed. So I got to wander around a town I never really got to, trying to find a good place to get some food for lunch. When I made it to a restaurant, I noticed a very well-made flyer in a window. It talked about an upcoming meteor shower and how beautiful it was going to be. It reminded me about how the next town over's light pollution was going to eclipse the beauty of God's sparkling show. It talked about an event being held up on the mountain where parking would be $20 for a breathtaking view of the sky, weather permitting. I smiled a little as I read the flyer and then did a double take. The flyer was boasting about a certain vista, a vista only available on Grandpa's land. I wrote down all of the info on the flyer and told myself I would call as soon as possible. I went into the shop to get food and wondered if I had messed up and completely forgotten an event or not. Well, turned out I hadn't when I got home and double-checked everything. We had parking for maybe 40 cars max, so I was curious where the cars would be parked. I decided to call with an out-of-state cell phone, thanks to an uncle and aunt who were visiting Grandma when I got back with my truck. Host: Hi, how can I help you? Me: Hi, I found your flyer. Oh my gosh, it sounds like so much fun. I mean, the stars in town are like 1000% better than anything in my area. Are they really so pretty up on the mountain? Host: Oh yes, it's one of the best places to watch the stars in our area. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. Me: But like, I'm worried about how many people are going to be going. Like, parking us. My car's not going to I don't know, end up with dirt on it, is it? Host: Oh, no worries about that. We have premium parking for $40, but the $20 is parking in a pasture. Me: The entrance fee is by car. Do we need another type of fee? Host: Oh yes, a $5 fee per person will also be needed. Make sure to bring cash for parking and your entrance fees. We'll have food carts too. I was shaking at this point in anger at this woman. I had checked the schedule and I knew no event was going to be happening. The campground had been abandoned a bit. All of the horses moved to my cousin's place at the base of the mountain, and I was taking care of Grandma and Grandpa at their cabin on another property on the same mountain, closer to the hospital and all. Me: All right, I'll be there. Thanks so much. I hung up after the goodbyes and started to shake in anger. I knew the property was closed down and we had had issues with someone breaking into the property. I had been trying my best to manage the events, the venue, and Grandma and Grandpa. I had. She had mentioned that a pasture would be parking for everyone, and I wondered which one it would be. Then I realized it was time for the soil to be tilled and smooth for the horses. I also realized something that I could do that would be wonderfully evil. I asked my visiting family if they wouldn't mind keeping an eye on Grandma and Grandpa, and I sped off to visit a family member. This particular man had married one of my Grandma and Grandpa's daughters and adored the family and worked as part of the fire department for our area. I came in with all the information I had and told him my plan. I signed the documents and he put the information away at the back of a drawer and gave me the okay to go with my plan. I tilled the pastures, all of them. I churned up the dirt and then smoothed it out, making it look like such an inviting slab of land to park on. I then left all of the gates wide open. I didn't want anyone breaking locks, and I knew this was going to happen one way or another. Now, if you've ever tilled the soil, you know the ground is soft. That's what plants need in order to grow. Hard soil will kill your plants almost as fast as overwatering or crows. The day before the event, I was in the main parlor getting some water when I noticed a car coming up. They sped up, and who stepped out but the pastor's wife I had seen all those years ago and another woman from the same church. It dawned on me that this was a con they were using, and I wondered how many times they had used the campgrounds before. I saw red. I hid and watched as they knocked on doors, checked all over the place for any signs of life, and then started to talk excitedly as they sped off. I made sure my grandparents were well looked after as I kept lurking on the campgrounds and waiting. They came back the next day, the day of the event, and brought a line of porter pots, a hand washing station, and a few food vendors that got set up. They turned on the footlights to the wedding vista, and I felt my blood just about boil. I could have called the cops on them for trespassing, but I had a much bigger plan in my mind for these nasty ladies. I waited until I saw cars lining the pastures, 3 pastures worth of cars. The driveway crammed so tight with cars that I was amazed at how many fit. The gravel drive was even being used, and so was the cement area by the barn. I hadn't realized how big this event was really going to be and instantly started to worry about my plan. There were so many people, but I had followed the letter of the law with help from my family. I had posted the private property and the closed for maintenance signs up all over the place. I was so nervous as I saw so many people going up the footpath, but resolved that my plan was foolproof. When the food vendors turned off their lights, I knew it was time. Everyone was blocked in and up at the vista. I started with the pastures. That lovely soil plus the sprinkler system quickly became a muddy sink that stuck all of the cars up to their tires or doors. I went all out. I turned on every fire sprinkler on the property. I knew the vista was getting a proper soaking too. Everything was. I had started with the pastures first, and with sprinklers that could douse a fire, it did everything I remembered as a kid. It flooded the pastures. It made the driveways impassable. It washed out part of the road for anything other than off-roading trucks or vehicles. With over 100 cars in the pastures, I was gleeful as I heard people coming down the path. I shut off the sprinklers after 10 minutes while everyone tried to figure out what was going on. People were calling the police, emergency services, screaming and confusion everywhere. The two ladies' cars I had taken great delight in letting out the air of their tires and adding extra water under. The car was sunk pretty deep. Well, my work was done. I hiked out and down the hill and left to go back into town. The police made it up by the time I had already gotten back to Grandma and Grandpa's place. I was found there, and family vouched that I had been there the entire night when the police showed up. I explained to the police I wouldn't be caught up on the campground tonight, especially not with a fire safety test going on. We were to test the water tank's pressure by running them on an automatic timer for 10 minutes and then measuring the water missing from the tanks in a few days when things settled and were passable. They wanted to know about the event, and we said we weren't hosting any events at all. Why would we when we had told the police department almost a month prior the campground was closed until further notice? The two women who had hosted the event were caught and charged with trespass and a whole mess of other things, including reckless endangerment. The firemen produced the permit too, to test the fire tanks. After all, they were paramount to the running of the fire department. They had 2 helicopters that would fill at those stations after all, and they needed to make sure that each pump could push out 100 gallons per minute after all. The women had to pay for tow services, damage the towing cost to the property, hotels, and inns for the people who were stranded and didn't have somewhere else to come pick them up, and a ton of legal fees. The woman from the church had been wanted for her previous crimes and had been living at this woman's house, helping her to run similar scams all over the country by using out-of-season abandoned properties for their scams. I don't have too much information on the end of it all, because unfortunately at the time it was wrapping up, Grandma passed away. I do know that all profits from the scams had been sunk into fixing the damages and repaying for the crimes. It cost a lot to dig out cars that got stuck in the mud. I hope you all enjoyed my tale of revenge. I did not expect it to be so long to write up, but then when I tell this story to family and friends, they all know the campgrounds, so I don't have to go into that. Speaking of campgrounds, have you ever been to a camp? And if so, did you enjoy it? Please let us know. I attended a How to Stop Being a Karen retreat recently. I think it might have helped, to be honest. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that he's basically an employee of his dad and not a business owner like he says he is? My friend Jay comes from a wealthy family as his dad owns several successful businesses. He's not a snob, but recently he's become a bit preachy about how it's better to be an entrepreneur than an employee. We've talked about it several times before. I've been working for a financial company for 9 years, and he always asks me about when I would put up my own business. I told him that I enjoy my current job because I get paid all right, have a great time with my coworkers, and learn many things from my clients. Jay said that I'm wasting my time working for a company that pays me so little compared to what I could earn if I were a business owner. I told him that I do have plans of having my own business someday, but that requires a large amount of capital and is a huge risk that I'm not yet comfortable taking. He said that I've been an employee for 9 years, so if not now, when? And that you can only get the reward if you take the risk. I usually try to brush things off because I know that Jay has good intentions. He's just a little out of touch with how hard it can be to put up your own business and be successful at it, since his dad's businesses have been there all his life. But the other day he was telling me about one of his cousins who asked for advice in college majors. He told me that he told his cousin to go for a business degree, work for 2 years to get some experience, and then have his own business, just like Jay said he did. He also told his cousin to remember to aspire for greater things and not be satisfied with being an employee forever. I was a bit irked about the last part and told him that, hey, there's nothing wrong with being an employee forever, and not everyone is cut to or wants to be a business owner. He said, yes, there's nothing wrong with being an employee forever, but if you're smart or have any ambition, you would want to have your own business instead of working for someone else your whole life. I told Jay that if he thinks that being a business owner is the best way to succeed financially, then why hasn't he put up his own business? He said that he does have his own business, referring to the construction firm his dad founded, which he now manages. and he doesn't have to put up a new one since his family already has one in place. I asked how it's his if he isn't the registered owner, needs approval from his dad for all major decisions, and doesn't control the company's income. I said that he's basically an employee who happens to be related to the owner, and the monthly allowance he gets for running the business is his salary. He didn't reply to me after that and hasn't talked to me since. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his friend the jerk? Please let us know. His friend sounds quite insufferable, to be honest. When shipping costs more than the item itself. In 2019, my wife and I welcomed our first child into the world, and as a baby shower gift, my father, who lives on the other side of the country, wanted to buy us a crib. Obviously, the easiest way to do this was to order from Amazon, so that is what he did. Total came out to something like $650 plus free shipping. Now, my wife and I were the ones to select which crib we wanted, and my father had no issue with the price. My dad orders it from his account, shipped it to my address. So the crib shows up. They drop it at the base of our driveway, and we have about 15 steps up our front door. That box is heavy, probably handy of 500 pounds, and it's just me and my pregnant wife. So, me. But we get it in, and we spend a day building it and go on with our lives. But as ads do what ads do, my phone was bombarded with ads for cribs, including the one my father just bought us less than 2 weeks ago. And surprise, surprise, it's gone on sale for $430. So I contact Amazon, let them know what's going on, and ask if they have a 30-day price guarantee. I figured there was no reason to tell my dad he could have saved $220 if he wasn't able to get the money back. Now, because it was over $200, they couldn't just do a refund, but said that we could return the crib and order a new one. Unfortunately, we've already built the crib and can't return it, so they told us, order a new one. When that crib comes, return the old one, get the refund. I made sure to ask about return shipping, and they said that would be covered as the item has free shipping, and I saved the transcript of our conversation. So that's what we start to do. I contact my dad, he puts a new order in, and we wait for the box to arrive. Similar situation, heavy box left at the edge of my driveway, but this time the weather was pretty crappy and the box got ruined. I took photos of it sitting at the curb and then moved it inside. I let my dad know, and he contacts Amazon and then gets an email providing the return address and instructions on how to return it, including a blank, affix postage here, spot on the label. Back to talking to Amazon support, and they're very sorry and look into it. Apparently, shipping on this crib is like $350, and I'm sitting there with 2 cribs and proof that Amazon said they'll cover the return shipping, so like $1,050 in shipping, all for what amounts to a $430 crib. So they told us to keep it and refunded the original purchase of $650. My sister lived a few hours from me, and her and her husband were looking at starting to try for kids, so she got herself a crib as a baby shower gift for my dad too. Am I the jerk for snitching on my brother when I found out he was planning to leave home? I'm 16, female, and my brother, Mikey, who's 19, does a lot around the house. Our mom works long hours, so he tends to handle anything related to the house, cooking, cleaning, etc. Even before lockdown, he had an agreement with his college where he was only there 1 day a week due to some anxiety issues and slight agoraphobia. He spends most of his time at home, doing his chores, studying, or helping look after our little brothers, 6-year-old twins. He and our mom do not really get along. They argue constantly. Mom thinks that Mikey exaggerates his anxiety as he is always a lot more relaxed and cheerful when he's with his friends. You'd barely know that there was anything wrong with him. He tends to try and spend as much time in his bedroom as he can when she is at home. They started arguing more frequently when he was coming up to leaving school and had to start thinking about college. Mom was insistent on him getting a business qualification, and after some arguments, he agreed. He tried to convince her to let him apply for a hair and beauty course, but Mom was having none of it. She doesn't want him going into something like that. Besides, if his anxiety is that bad, then there's no way he'd be able to do it. So after a few months before the lockdown, Mikey started having to go to mandatory college classes around 4 days a week. It didn't make sense as the college knows about his anxiety, but he was insistent that it is mandatory and he was coming home with a bunch of notes and stuff, so it seemed like he was going. Mom really wants him to get this qualification, so she sorted out babysitters so he could go. However, last week I heard him talking to his friends. They were talking about housing and he told them that he has money saved up. I was confused and questioned him about it later. He was reluctant at first, but eventually admitted that he was moving out. He had been lying about the mandatory classes, instead working at the local care home. He was saving money to move out and had already dropped off any important documents, birth certificate, passport, etc. at a friend's house. I asked him why he wanted to leave, and he told me that Mom was controlling. She's really not, and that he wanted out. He's also not interested in going into business and has been emailing several college lecturers to try and sort out funding for a hair and beauty course. I think he's doing it to wind Mom up, in all honesty. He begged me not to tell her, but I couldn't help it. I told her as soon as she got home, and she freaked out with him. They've been arguing a lot more than usual, and Mikey is going even further out of his way to avoid her. He's been pretty off with me as well because of this. I told a couple of friends about the situation, but they seem to think I should have kept my mouth shut. I just didn't want my mom to have to find out 2 or 3 weeks before Mikey left, considering he does so much in the house. Am I the jerk? Edit. I'm just going to edit this because I'm not going to explain it in every single comment. I did not tell my mom because I thought I'd have to do everything Mikey did once he left. Mom knows I will flat out refuse to do it. So she has to put out a couple of advertisements for babysitters and nannies and is going to try and get a cleaner if we can afford it, which we probably should be able to. Edit 2. This is going to be my last edit. I can deal with people who might think I'm the jerk, but I'm not putting up with the disgusting DMs. For the people saying my mom shouldn't have shaved Mikey's hair off after they dyed it. She did warn him after the first time he bleached and dyed it. That time she just made him dye it back. He is not being singled out either. I can't dye my hair either, and my little brothers won't be able to either. It's not just Mikey. And for the people asking why I hate my brother, I don't. I love him to pieces. He always used to help me with my homework, spent time with me, and was a shoulder to cry on whenever I needed. I didn't tell Mom to hurt him. I told her because I didn't think Mikey was going to give her much notice to sort out babysitters and stuff, and she doesn't need that stress right now. You lot might not believe me, but it's true. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk? And if so, why? Please let us know. Bruh. And please come watch this video next, you're gonna love it. And if you join as a channel member today, I'll give you a special shout out in tomorrow's video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.